All right, hello everyone. Today is Tuesday, January 30th, 2018, and this is the weekly Sig Docs meeting for Kubernetes. Let's see, let's start up with new attendees. I see no one who is new. Let's see, follow-ups from last meeting. Bot automation, it's alive. It's awesome. Hopefully, Joe Heck will show up here in a minute or two, and we can talk more about what reviewers and approvers, what those roles look like specifically in the context of having bot automation. But yeah, no, it's amazing to have the same bot automation that other Kubernetes SIGs and repos have across the organization. So he's not here, but thanks, Aaron Krickenberger. You're awesome. Yay. Okay, Steve, I put an item on here to talk about the style guide. It's important work, and I want to make sure that it doesn't get dropped or forgotten sort of out of our stream of consciousness. I put a link to that PR for 7030, which I think is really good work. Is there anything else that we need to cover, or any initiatives that haven't been really picked up yet in terms of getting the style guide really updated? Is there any help that you need? Do you want to say a little bit more just about where we are with the style guide?
Yeah, I guess I'd like people who have opinions about this to chime in the issue. I got one comment from Joe who says it looks good to him. But if people want to go in there and make comments on the specific, the specific suggestions I'm making about to update and what areas to revisit, that'd be helpful. And, regardless of how many comments I get, I would say sometime this week I'll start a PR for updating the style guide.
Steve, I would love to hear more from you about okay, so I get the missing information bit. I mean, that seems pretty clear to me, at least. What's not as clear to me is the revisiting guidelines.
Mm-hmm. I
can think of all kinds of reasons why to do it, but if I understand why you want to revisit, especially the specific ones that you bring up, it might help me think differently, or sort of maybe more usefully or helpfully about this stuff. I care a lot about style guides too, and I have my own sense of where the issues might be, but I'd rather lead with your sense of it.
Yeah.
Before we jump in, these are excellent questions, and I want to make sure that this discussion is as visible as possible to people who are interested in it. Is this a discussion that is better handled in the course of a PR, or is it better to have in a meeting right now?
I think I can give a quick answer to the question that Jennifer just asked, and it'd be good to do that here.
Yeah, go for it.
So the reason I listed these areas to be revisited is because when I was reviewing the new content that's being written for user journeys, all of these guidelines I saw violated. And so I wanted to know if people still agree with these guidelines, and if so, I'd like them to be followed.
That is absolutely reasonable, I think. And yeah, we can't recommend it, don't enforce.
I mean, for example, in some of the new content that's written, we use the word we. We say blah blah blah, and we recommend, or we have something in store for you. And I don't hate the use of we. It happens to be in our style guide because it was the general feeling of those who were in the room when we first wrote the style guide. It happens to be the very strong feeling of several people who work on the Google Cloud Docs, but it doesn't have to be our style here in the Kubernetes docs. So that that's an example of something. I just want to come to an agreement on it, and you know, then get what we agree on in there, and then stick to it.
This is an awesome goal. Jennifer, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I don't know whether we want to take any more of this discussion in this meeting or not. I find it useful to talk about this stuff in the meeting because I'm struggling with this stuff myself. I mean, I think that, you know, the goal of making the style guide something that we actually enforce and making it enforceable, even, you know, just thinking sort of larger too, both the new user journeys content and then the standards to which we review PRs for other content. I mean, those seem like they're related, right? And there are all sorts of things that I was not only trained to pay attention to, but think are still important about writing as clear and useful documentation as possible that may or may not be appropriate to include for the Kubernetes docs style guide. And I'm still struggling with this.
Just curiously, do you have an example of such a thing? That's such an intriguing statement I had to ask.
Well, so especially in the context of the Kubernetes documentation, I think to sort of step back one level of abstraction from the we versus you, it seems to me that it's useful to write with an awareness of the usefulness of both terms, right? So, but that if by default we're addressing the user, assuming that the user is not in fact someone helping create either the documentation or the code, then you seems most useful. But then what that would let us do is reserve we for the personification of the Kubernetes development community. That might not be a useful distinction, even if we could get agreement about what it means. But I think like this about word choice.
That's cool.
And I guess, you know, the other examples, I mean, Steve's other examples are things that I notice a lot, the jargon and idioms in particular, and Latin phrases, closely related, right? There are reasons relating to usability and reaching as broad an audience as possible why that guidance in documentation circles and has existed for quite some time. Maybe they aren't as relevant as they once were, or maybe they're not relevant to the Kubernetes community, but maybe they are. How do we know? And then it also comes back to the enforceability issue, which is, I think, what Steve is speaking most immediately to.
So this is all really valuable discussion. And again, I want to make sure that we preserve it in a place that is germane to the issue itself. So I mean, I know Jennifer, you and I are both verbal processors. And so maybe if we like have a scheduled time where we can just talk all this through, that would be really good and useful. But I also don't want, I want to make sure that that this discussion gets all of the attention it deserves. And if we want to have like a special weekly meeting for it, then sure, we can do that. But maybe just maybe a special topic meeting.
Mm-hmm.
That would be better for that.
And I'm fine with whatever. I'm also, I think that I will try to, you know, commit some of these thoughts of mine to the issue comments too.
Excellent. Thank you.
To preserve a bit more. But thank you for letting me process in the meeting a bit.
Sure.
To see if I could. And Brad, I appreciate your question because, you know, at least, you know, I feel like I'm not speaking into the void.
I want to say a couple more things because I do think it's appropriate for everyone in Sig Docs to at least know that these issues are in front of us. So an example of some things that we might put in the style guide that, Jennifer was saying, well, we might not want to get too detailed, but there are things that we tend to do. And word choice is one of those. So in most style guides, if you're on a writing team, you'd see some list of words that are preferred. So we might prefer to say might when we need possibility and may when we need permission, but not to crisscross between the two. That might be getting a little too detailed for a style guide that's part of an open source effort. So there's that. The second comment is that it might be okay for us to be a little more detailed than what we will actually enforce in the open source world, just so that we know what we as writers are shooting for. So I don't mind having style guidance like we prefer might for possibility, may for permission. We don't want to use, say, the word since as a substitute for because. That way we can agree on what, how we want to write, but it doesn't mean we have to enforce every last one of those details when we're taking a PR from someone from outside our little group, from the community.
Sure.
So it sounds like you have essentially the classic 80% solution. You put in the higher bar, and worst case, we're going to get 80% of what we want just from the core group. And the other folks, well, you can always, update their patches later, right? You can always let it go in and somebody can do a little cleanup later too, but it's not the end of the world either way, right?
And those cleanups, by the way, are really good low-hanging fruit for newbies as well.
Yes. Love the new low-hanging fruit.
Right, and we talked last time, I think, about the idea of if someone does a pull request that's an edit of an existing doc, we don't necessarily want to take that opportunity to clean the entire doc. Mm-hmm. We probably want to restrict our editing to the portion that's been changed, and then maybe open an issue to later revisit the entire doc for a style guide upgrade.
I wonder if it might be, so Steve, I agree, I think substantively with everything you've said. I wonder if it might be easier if we took an existing style guide, like, I don't know, like the GKE, the GKE style guide, or whatever I don't know if there's like one specifically for GKE, but like the Google Cloud style guide, and pin ourselves to that with specific adaptations as necessary. That might be that might allow us to differentiate meaningfully where differentiation is required, but otherwise set our writing at a common bar. Thoughts on that?
You mean refer to the other style guide for the more detailed elements? Is that what you're thinking of?
Yes, saying we follow the style guide with the following exceptions, and then like thinking specifically about like call out format, which I think is unique to Kubernetes. Like if there's I guess what I'm saying is let's find a good example of a style guide we like and make changes to it as necessary.
Okay, let me think about that. I'm not sure off the top of my head what I think of that.
Okay, sure, we can revisit this. George.
There's a pull request template in the .github where I think it wouldn't hurt to plop in also please refer to a style guide link. So when people do a pull request, they know that there's a style guide. Because I've known it was there, and it wasn't until you mentioned that I was like, I should be checking that when I do pull requests, and I always forget. So
I bet you also clean the template language out of your commit message before you submit your PR, George.
Yeah, right. Because
a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people don't even notice the template is there. I'm not saying that's not a great idea. I just, it'll be one of those like add 20% value.
Mm-hmm. The template even says, please delete this note before submitting the pull request. I think that's funny, but okay.
Yeah. If wishes were fishes. Okay. Let's see. I'm just adding a note to the agenda to revisit this next week, February 6th, to talk about whether it would be better to adapt an existing style guide, for example, Google Cloud if they have one, or create from, well, continue creating from scratch. Okay. Anything else about the style guide right in this moment? Okay. Steve, thank you for opening this and guiding us forward on this one. It's valuable work, so thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Just a quick note. I will be out starting tomorrow through Sunday the 4th. I will be back next Monday, February 5th. It's already February, everybody. We're getting close to it. It's nuts.
I wish I had a scream sound effect I could have inserted right there.
I am moving to Portland on Wednesday and settling in for the next few days after that. So I'll see you all again on Monday. If there's anything that you want to grab me about before I go, I'll be around for the rest of today. Let's see. Has Joe joined us yet? Joe has not joined us. All right. I would, as much as I would love to talk about volunteering for reviewing duties, Joe is the one who's put in a lot of work on opening a pull request specifically to talk about. Joe opened a PR to get really specific about pull request, like reviewers and approvers, and has done a lot of the work that we've been talking about needing to be done. So I would love to have Joe be the one to walk us through that. Is everyone okay if we defer this a week for Joe to guide us through it? Okay, anybody really want to go for it today? Okay, let's defer this for a week. All right, that takes us. Oh, sorry. Let's say what to do with teams. I had what to do with repo teams and collaborate. Oh, okay. Before we move on to user journeys, so now that we have bot automation live, I was looking at the collaboration settings for our repo for Kubernetes website. And let me just get to a place where I can share my screen easily. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So we have a number of teams with varying levels of access to our repo. And I don't know if we want to try and clean this up. If there's no problem here, we can just leave it be. Or if we want to do anything in particular with this. The only thing that I've done so far is gone through and changed Kubernetes maintainers. I changed back to read access. Jared enabled that for write access in the course of the 1.8 release, and then just never remembered to set it back to read. So that's the one change that I've made so far. I guess I don't know enough. I don't have enough context. I'm still new enough that I don't know enough context about all of these particular teams and like levels of individual access. So I don't know if we want to or can or need to do anything with to clean up team settings and collaboration. Does anyone have any?
So for sure, we need to clean up the bottom part about individual collaborators because some of those people we gave, oh, it looks like maybe that's already been done.
Oh, yeah, I did. I went through, sorry, I also went through and changed all those individuals back to read access.
But some of these people, I think maybe are already in Sig Docs maintainers, so it's moot that they're listed here. We could get them completely off this list. I think somebody like Qi Ming ought to be in Sig Docs maintainers, and Brad ought to be in Sig Docs maintainers. And if we want to grant those two people right to access just during, you know, the week or so it takes to make that happen, I think that'd be fine.
So Brad, I am 100% behind joining Sig maintainers if you want to, Brad.
Well, please. Thank you.
For Keeming in particular, I'd like for him to start attending our meetings. I'm reluctant to have someone be a maintainer and not be participating in the discussion and the life of what we do. I can say more about that, Steve, but I would rather have that conversation offline.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So Brad, yeah, let's get you into Sig Docs maintainers. You've been voluntold.
Thank you. It's an honor.
I don't know what to. So individual contributors, I think, are pretty straightforward. I don't think we need to specify like a list of individuals who have read access to the repo. I mean, everybody has read access to the repo. Right.
So we could remove those people then from the list because it's moot, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure it is. I mean, there's a collaborator with read access, but if you're not listed as read access, it may be that you have even less permission than that. We should look into that.
Yeah, I thought we added those read access so that we could list them as reviewers or something. Like if
that's right. If you want to assign a PR to someone, they have to have read access. It's not enough to just have nothing.
Right.
And I'll have to look back. I think if you're in the Kubernetes organization, maybe you automatically have read access. But if you're not in the Kubernetes organization, that's why we would list you here as a collaborator. In fact, I think the long name for that is external collaborator.
I think that's why. So originally, a lot of these, like Sadev, like Tina Zhang, like Larry Avange, these are all participants at the Doc Sprint in Austin. And so I think that was the sort of the emergency measure to make sure that they could contribute, was adding them as individual collaborators to the repo to short circuit the whole joining the organization. I guess do we want to continue having a list like this of individual contributors? Do we want to? I'm just thinking, like, do we add them to the group Kubernetes reviewers? I don't know.
I don't think we can until they're members of the Kubernetes organization.
Right.
So
Okay.
I'll take this as a work item to go through that list of individuals and prune it as, you know, any obvious pruning I'll do. Like if somebody's already in the organization and in one of these teams, I can take them out of the individual collaborator list. And then maybe after I do that, then next time we can see what's left and, you know, how much we want to keep.
Yeah, we need to encourage the people to go through the process to join the Kubernetes org, because that was always just supposed to be like you know, a temporary fix, so that they could still get stuff done.
Yeah, it's,
yeah.
If they want to continue being contributors, I think it's important to move them inside of the org.
Okay.
So.
And we probably should change the name of this one, kubernetes.github.io hyphen maintainers to Kubernetes website maintainers or something like that.
Agreed. I can take that on. I'll do that one. For the rest of these, even though their function is unclear, it's not really causing any problems right now. So I guess let's just leave it alone. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing.
So do we have a team called something like Sig Docs PR Reviews?
No.
Yes, sort of. I created one, but the problem was I didn't have permissions to put it underneath the Kubernetes organization. So if we could do that, that would be pretty awesome. I just didn't have time to like find out what it would take to do that.
Yeah, because a lot of the SIGs have a team like that, right? And the idea is that if you're in a pull request and want to get somebody's attention, you can CC, SIG whatever PR reviews.
I left thinking about Joe Heck specifically talked about that in his review, or in the additions that he was making in the PR for reviewers and approvers. My stance on it was that yes, we can have a different group. I don't think I'm in favor of publicizing that alias is available, because it's almost never required. But I'm open to changing my mind on that.
Okay, we can cross that bridge as we get some of these other things
Fair
figured
enough.
out.
So Andrew, for adding that team, I guess it's sort of like admin chicken. Which of us has the admin permissions to do it? But I agree. Let's at least make sure that we have those teams available.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to take this on, Zach, go ahead, and I can I think make you an owner or something.
Okay.
Because I just didn't have time to like follow through.
Sure. Add teams for reviewers, approvers. Contributor admin tasks. Okay. Let's see, user journeys update. Jennifer and Andrew, please talk to us about user journeys.
Yeah, so we're gonna launch the MVP tomorrow. So I can share, yeah, let me share what it looks like. Oops. Let's see. Can you guys see this all right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well. Okay. So we stripped out the stuff that we weren't going to launch with, like the migration path, but and then the users were just keeping the application developer and cluster operator personas to start with. And then we have like the foundational, intermediate, and advanced topics level. And for like the application developer and for I think all three levels, we have a content page that's like kind of a breakdown of like what you should learn and in what order. So we have like kind of the get started, pretty much set up an environment, deploy an application, and then understanding some of the concepts, and then some additional resources. So we have that for the foundation, intermediate level, and advanced topics are things that not everyone needs to use for their cluster or their application. So, and then for the cluster operator, I think the advanced topics I just linked out to. We didn't want to spend time, I guess, writing a whole another content page. So I'm just linking out to some existing content that we have. So that's going to be our cheat for now as the MVP. And then contributors will have like the docs contributors stuff, which is our existing content. And then there's code contributor that's links out to the community documentation, I think that we imported, George. And then there's community contributor, which are like the mentoring stuff, more related to like Paris's. So that's what it looks like right now. And then if you're want to just go back to the way things were and just like browse the docs directly, there's a browse docs button, which will show like the high level topics for each of the buckets that we have. That way it should bridge the gap with from the old to the new. Does anyone have any questions?
That looks awesome. I just wanted to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is incredible. This is absolutely incredible. I love how you've got, you know, the different ways through, but at the same time, I get to come there and it's one-stop shopping for me on that page, and I can figure out the best place to where I need to go. I've been dreaming for this. This is really cool. And then you've got the whole browser docs. This is awesome.
Thanks.
This is so gorgeous.
So, yeah, so as I said, it's a MVP. So once it's out, we can start iterating on it. So if you go through it and you see any issues or things we can improve, you know, go ahead and, you know, start submitting PRs or issues, and we can just kind of build from this.
That was going to be my question, is how do we get feedback on the MVP? But perfect. No, this looks so good.
It really does.
I like this heart eyes emoji.
If you're looking for some feedback on the MVP, why don't you announce it at the community meeting on Thursday? Like at the end, not like a full 10-minute demo, but
yeah, I'm sure we'll get a flood of stuff. I just wanted to get something out the door before, because if we just kept getting feedback before we launched, it would never launch.
Yeah, ship it.
I'm gonna write you down then.
Okay.
All right.
And then, sorry for joining late. The other person that was here, I'm not sure where he went, probably another meeting, is Philip Mallory. And he's a Noogler, and he's going to be in our container docs team. So he may be popping in on these meetings. I think he will mostly be on the GKE side, but like we may have him do some Kubernetes stuff occasionally.
Okay. Oh, cool. Welcome, Philip. Awesome.
So I have one comment on the user journeys. As we're looking for topics, you know, we've talked about which topics should we make a full pass through and bring them into alignment with the style guide and make sure they're accurate and all of that. I think a great place to look for those is go through the user journeys and see which topics we link to. And those are the topics that should be high priority for making sure they're the best they can be.
Absolutely. That's an excellent suggestion, Steve. Andrew, do you mind sharing the preview link to the user journeys site? Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, just to reiterate Steve's suggestion that the content inside of the user journeys paths is, if you're ever wondering like what needs work, the stuff inside of the user journeys paths, I think needs the priority. And that segues nicely into CNCF is hiring. And I'm looking to hire a writer who will focus, whose job will be to focus on the content of Kubernetes, making sure that the content is constantly getting attention. Somebody who's dedicated to actually improving the documentation itself. I am sort of torn in many directions with various like managing different CNCF documentation projects, managing different layers. I'm sort of more involved in the process of Kubernetes documentation than the documentation itself, at least more than I'd like to be. So I'm looking to hire a writer who can focus on Kubernetes content. So if you know anybody, if you want to apply yourself, I'm totally not poaching from our partners. But yes, would gladly take recommendations or referrals. So George, I apologize. I did not see that you had added an item to the agenda. I thought you were just showing up here out of the goodness of your heart. Not to say that you can't do both, but yes, George, let's talk about static generation of the community repo docs.
Yeah, so the import, this is mostly a question for Andrew. I know the first import, it was like a one shot, and I was wondering if we could get that either run again or turned on like weekly or something. It doesn't need to be like done often, but
Yeah, so I mean, the script is in the website code, so you can run it yourself and then, you know, submit a
Oh,
PR.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, but then, yeah, the next step would be to automate it. I think we were just doing it manually now, as per Steve's suggestions, to like work out the kinks. And then once,
Okay.
if we're just constantly running it and it seems fine, then we can, you know, feel free to build sort of like an automated piece. Or, I mean, I guess we can kind of figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I didn't know I could just do that myself. That's really great. And then the last bit, the slash imported in the URL, is that going to go away eventually?
So we can find a different place in the documentation. I think as an initial thing, we're just like, well, we'll put all the imported docs there, but the script, you can specify exactly like, you know, where it's coming from and where you want to put it in the website repo.
Okay.
So you can change that.
Right, because I was thinking just slash docs slash community, just like removing the bit would be fine.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And then just make sure you add like a redirects in the underscore redirects file.
Okay. All right. We haven't really told anybody about these pages yet, though. So
Yeah, it's up to you.
okay. All right. All right. I'll have to discuss that with Contribax, see what they want to do. But awesome. I didn't know I could self-service myself that way. Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you have any questions like for how to run the script, I mean, we put instructions in there, but if you have any problems with it, just let me know.
Yeah. If you could just toss a URL where it is, I can probably do that today in the chat or something, or in the notes. I would appreciate that. Thank you. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Sure thing. Okay, next week we will revisit the style guide and it's sort of poll how folks feel about adapting an existing style guide or whether we want to continue doing our own creation from what we have. And we'll also hear from Joe about responsibilities for reviewing and approving. And in the meantime, we have, looks like some repo cleanup to do for contributors and permission levels. And I cannot wait, so excited to see the MVP for user journeys. It's awesome. All right, I think that is it. Last call for items. Anybody have anything we want to talk about? Okay, 3, 2, 1. That's a SIG meeting. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Yep.
Have a good week.
Thanks, you too. Travel safe.
Thanks.